To another episode of Deep True Crime. I'm Manny Rodriguez. In today's episode, I want to continue, or should I say, I want to share with you a news story that has recently broke. We were hearing little bits and pieces of things, and then all of a sudden, we find out that this suspected serial is said to have been trying to lure people who had just come into a bunch of money and lure them into believing, hey, I know where we can get some gold. I know where we can go digging, and there's a lot of gold, and I've just been needing some help to get it, only to do the most sinister thing a person can do. Let's go ahead and dive into what we know at this time. A Washington serial killer suspect is said to have lured his victims in with the promises of buried gold before he would brutally do the unthinkable to them and leave them in a wooded area and steal their possessions. And now Richard Bradley Jr., the 40-year-old, is now in jail awaiting trial for a 2021 murder of Brandi Blake. But what we find out is while he is waiting in jail for his trial, we find out about the murders of 3 additional Auburn, Washington area residents that were now tacked onto his current charges. And now he's facing the unthinkable. And so now Brandi Blake, this is her in this picture. Rest in peace, Brandi. She was the main one that he was suspected of doing something to before more proof would come out. And so now he's awaiting trial in this one murder case, and now he's been charged with several more murders as prosecutors allege that he lured his 4 victims to their deaths by faking the idea of, hey, I know where we can find some buried gold. And so Richard Bradley Jr. is now in jail. And so he is charged with first-degree murder of Brandi Blake back in 2021 after the 44-year-old was found buried in a park in the town of Auburn. Now, this month of December, prosecutors, they filed even more murder charges against Bradley, including the 2021 shooting deaths of a father and son who had remained a mystery until now, and also the 2019 death of a man whose remains were discovered near Blake's grave. And so Bradley's trial for Blake's killing, that's scheduled to begin next month. Now, we continue to find out more about this. He has not yet entered a plea on the new murder charges, and that's according to the Seattle Times. But the prosecutor in this case, Thomas Band II, alleged that Bradley used the same ploy in each of his victims' death. That's literally what they're saying. He would tell them that he required their help to dig up a stash of stolen gold. He said, I know where the stolen gold is. I just need help. And he would do this to people who just came into money. And he would subsequently take his victims to a wooded area, act like the gold was there, and then kill them, steal their cars and their personal possessions. And so, that's when they start finding them in these wooded areas. Among the new deaths of which Bradley is being charged includes Emilio Maturin, who was 36 years old when he disappeared. And so, his family, his girlfriend, they all wondered, what happened to our loved one? And so they continue to hold out hope. And literally, they did not have to hold out much until they found Brandi Blake. So this is Emilio Maturin. Emilio, he was last seen in Auburn, Washington on July 19th, 2019 in the summer. Now, his girlfriend is the one that reported him missing 2 weeks after he was last seen. Unbeknownst to her, she had met the killer before. Sorry, the alleged killer in the past. And so in this, she informed authorities that she had overheard Brandi telling her boyfriend that he needed help digging up some buried gold in Auburn. Now, Mathurin, he was hesitant at first, but ultimately he decided to go along with the man. But she vividly remembers in an interview she shared that he was leery about going. That's what she said. And so according to his girlfriend, he frequently left the house with a lot of cash on him. And on the last day that he ever left, he had around $15,000 in cash with him in his new BMW. Okay. And so this was one of the motives. This is how they're able to tie him to these, because it seems like he used the same MO in other ones, in other cases to this. And so they really, outside of that, they don't know much more. They continue to wait to see what happened here. Right. And so hours later, she's like, okay, my boyfriend's missing. She's looking for him. And she tracks his cell phone to Game Farm Park. Okay, she goes there. Now she knows, like, okay, he has a lot of cash. He went with this guy. This is weird. And so he has a tracking. A lot of times people can follow you, track you, keep you safe, know where you're at. I'm a coach, and I know some of the parents, they'll be like, okay, she is right over there in the corner at the stoplight. She'll be here in a minute, as we're waiting for them. So I know a lot of people do this with their loved ones. And so Mathurin's girlfriend, she tracks his cell phone to Game Farm Park in Auburn, about half an hour outside of Seattle. So she goes over there to look for him. And so she's looking around. Then she starts getting these eerie feelings. She then gets a little bit scared and she's like, I'm out of here. She leaves. Hours later, police in the Auburn area, they discovered an unregistered BMW that was parked near an open field. They waited for the driver to return, but guess what? They never get him, but when they attempt to confront him, that's when he leaves. Brandi was arrested a short time later after he fled the vehicle on foot. And so that was added as another charge. So when they come up again on Brandi, that's when it's like, why are you trying to leave? Why, you obviously are suspect about something. And so then he was charged with eluding police. In the court documents, one of the pieces, they say, Brandi, he has a common scheme. He would tell individuals that he needs their help digging up gold, and then he would lure them out to a wooded area. That's how they end up at Game Farm Park, I believe. And so again, Brandi, he was arrested a short time later after he fled the vehicle, but that was just another charge. Now, in March of 2021, there was a father and a son that were found deceased on an overgrown path close to this Game Farm Park, right? And so that adds some suspicion, like, okay, now that we find these other two, could these other two also be connected? You see, the two victims, Michael Goldman, 59 years old, and his son, 31-year-old Vance Lakey, they were found deceased in this overgrown path that was close to this park. But see, they were found shot dead. But before his death, Michael Goldman, he had received a sizable inheritance, another MO that fits this. Brandi, he was considered a person of interest in both murders at that time, so they already had him on their radar. You see, 2 months later, he was then charged with second-degree arson for allegedly offering a man $1,000 to set fire to Goldman and Lakey's impounded SUV, which adds another twist to this, right? And so now we wait to find out, is there even more to this sinister story, right? We don't know much more outside of that. You see this apartment here? This is where the girlfriend is saying, like, This guy, he came over. He came over to this apartment, to our apartment. He was in our home. And that's the girlfriend. She says that he came over here, they hung out, they were having conversation, and then he was brought up. They needed help digging up some buried gold in Auburn. But even though he was leery, he's a businessman. He's like, I want opportunity. This sounds too good to be true. My friends, generally, if it sounds too good to be true, it probably is. But let's be real. That's not the first time you've heard that. It won't be the last time. But what I will say is it's reasons like this why I do this show. We never know when someone sinister can be lurking. The promise of gold is something else. Right? And so he would lure these 4 victims into the woods on a search for gold before doing the worst to them. That's what prosecutors and the charging documents are now saying. Okay. First, he was already in jail for one murder, Miss Blake's murder. Now he is accused of murdering 3 others. And so now it is looking like he was already accused of murder. Now he's charged with 3 more counts. So, my friends, you just never know when something could go wrong in this crazy world we live in. We have to be conscious of that. We just never know. But how did they find this, right? How did they find that, why is there another body here, right? And so it wasn't but around 30 feet from her remains, okay, where they would find 3 rib bones, which at that time they was like, okay, these bones do not belong to her. They belong to a different person. And so that's when they're like, okay, let's dig a little deeper. And then those are the rib bones that were later to be determined to be those of Emilio Maturin, who had been reported missing since 2019, as you can see right here. And so that's when it's like, okay, this is looking like it's tied to him. And, that's why it's like he would do this to them. Then he would take their vehicles after they were reported missing. Okay, so this doesn't look good for him. They obviously have more evidence charging that would relate to him. I haven't been able to find these charging documents yet. I hope that I'll be able to get them, but I'm still learning how to find the actual documents myself. And so, according to charging documents, they say that Maturin's girlfriend is the one that reported him missing. And then she tracks his cell phone to where his ribs were later found. But, that she did tell police, like, hey, I got scared and I left. This was too scary. And, we wait to find out what else. What else will he be charged with? Is there more? Right now, he is being held without bail with his trial in Blake's death scheduled for January. And until then, but this man who is from Kent, Washington, what is he doing up there? We really don't know, right? We don't know much about him. We'll dive into him a little bit, but what is he doing there, right? At the end of the day, what if it's one thing that we do know is that people are capable of the absolute worst. So when you stop and you think like, okay, what is a person capable of? Well, turn to YouTube, type in true crime. You'll see beyond the scope of what a person is capable of. To be completely honest with you, I struggle. I do this all the time. I read stories all the time. I'm looking for the next story all the time. And my struggle is I still go through these and I'm like, this is a surreal moment. How could this happen? You would think that I would be a little more used to this maybe, but it never gets easy. It never goes away. So for me, I do have these surreal moments all the time. All the time, because as I'm reading this, I'm like, how could someone be so capable of doing the unthinkable? I haven't figured that out. Have you? And here's the truth. Here's the absolute truth. We never will. This has been going on before any of us. But why does it still surprise me? Why is it still like a surreal moment? And I guess the right word is not surprise. Surreal, it still is. But surprise, it is not. It is not surprising anymore because I do this all the time. So Richard Bradley. Now, Richard, again, he had so much life to live, and he was looking to like, what was he hoping to get out of this? Is it a thrill? So 40 years old, arrested on May 21st, 2021, but in the death of Miss Blake. He was married and living in a recreational home in Renton with his wife. Okay, he does have a defense attorney, Peter Geisness. He pleaded not guilty on December 14, 2023, and he is being held without bail in that charge. And now he's been charged with 3 additional murders. And so, again, just one at the beginning. And he also has pending criminal cases from 2018, 2019, 2020. You know, he had 2 counts of unlawful possession of a firearm, arson, vehicular assault, 2nd degree robbery. And so inside that home that he was living with his wife, they found 3 pounds of METH. They found so many Percocet pills when he was arrested. They even found a shotgun. They found heroin. They found handgun. I mean, this guy is one of the worst, it seems like, especially if he did truly do this to all 4 of them. That is the worst of the worst. And so Emilio, he didn't deserve that, right? Known to carry a lot of cash and drugs, you know, his girlfriend reports him missing, and she, you know, I shared with you, she overhears the conversation. And, you know, he ends up going anyway. But we wait to find out, like, okay, you know, like, what all do you have on these guys? Because we don't really know. We do not really know. And so, truth is, you know, no one deserved this. The dad and son, the 2nd and 3rd victim, you know, the 2 of them, they were living in a tent, and then Michael himself receives a large inheritance which is supposed to help them change their life. And so he buys a $3,500 Dodge Durango with some of that cash, and the 2 of them, they were living in that Dodge, you know, at the time that they go missing, right? If this guy is capable of doing something like that, that is, again, is beyond the worst. And so Michael Goldman, he dies from a gunshot wound to the head, and then his body is discovered April 21st. Now his son died from, you know, multiple gunshot wounds to the head, right? So why multiple? We don't know. There's still a lot behind this. And for a little while, you want to talk about something beyond comprehensive? Richard and his wife drove that Dodge Durango around. What was his excuse to his wife on where they got that? You know, so what's that about? Or did she know? And so Brandi, you know, she had her problems, but she didn't deserve this. She was known to be a drug dealer. She had recently won $20,000 at the casino. She was known to have a lot of cash around her, as drug dealers probably do. And so there was a video at Walgreens where she was last seen with Richard around 9 p.m. on May 5th, 2021. And so he's seen returning with her. And so he lures her to Auburn Park again, telling her that they would be digging up a stash of gold that was stolen, and he wanted her to help sell it. So she buys into that. But you know, he doesn't stop. That's the final victim. That's the victim that he is finally charged with and then held in jail. But it wasn't for a couple years before they started putting more pieces together. And so, you know, her family, they noticed, like, hey, she's not posting anything on social media that's not like her. right? But again, Richard and his wife are seen driving her black Ford Mustang after her death. And then her Mustang would be later found abandoned in Tacoma, Washington. Okay, and you stop and you think about that. You got to ask yourself, does the wife know something? Does the wife know more than she's telling us, right? And so when it came to doing all their searching, they do their search, and they bring some canines into the game park's wilderness area in Auburn, Washington. A man at the park, he himself said, I saw someone a few nights earlier with a backpack and a shovel. I found that odd, and so that would lead detectives to an area south of the White River. And so that's where they find Brandi's body face down in a shallow grave. Along there was also a pickaxe. They found a shovel, again, where he was also seen with the shovel. They found a key card, and this was in a second hole near the grave. And then near that grave is when they find those rib bones, which they say, there's no way that this is hers. So who do these belong to? These are male rib bones. Okay. And so then that's when the investigators, of course, they're going to use DNA, and they match the ribs to Emilio Maturin, who had himself been missing. And so even in that, this guy was already a person of interest in this. Okay. So they already had their eyes on him. It was just a matter of what else do we know? Right. Because he was seen with Brandi. Right? And so he was arrested and charged with one count at that time. There was no more related until, boom, later on when they find more in reference to boom. And so, we don't really know more outside of what we're getting from the media, because it's hard to get those charging documents. My friends, if you know how to get those charging documents, let me know. Hey, my friends, if these are the type of stories you like to follow, make sure you hit that subscribe button. At the end of the day, this is not about me. I want to share with you what could go wrong in this crazy world we live in, because I want you to be a little more prepared, a little more aware, a little more alert. I'm Manny Rodriguez. This has been another episode of Deep True Crime. Until next time, my friends, peace, be safe, be careful, be aware, be alert.